Hey, welcome back. I guess maybe... Oh, I turned the white noise machine down because, yeah, it was too loud. So hopefully it's better now. Oh, I got the map, too. Stop making noise up there. God, kill me. Sorry. I was feeling self-conscious this week about, like, doing a bad job. I think maybe it's because I wasn't talking about, like, I felt like a little bit like I was reverting to last year where I was just kind of talking about books and stuff that's boring. But it's not boring. Maybe that's the reason why I was being self-conscious, is because I thought this stuff was more interesting. But I have another note about... I've been reading both books at the same time, which is kind of cool. The Dark Forest and also Team of Rivals. I listen to it when I'm at work. What? It's so cool. Best job ever. So, a couple of things I wanted to clarify from last time, which was the Corwin Amendment. The Corwin Amendment was a proposed amendment by FireRed, who was Lincoln's Secretary of State, I think. The proposal was to create an amendment. Well, I guess the guy was Corwin who came up with it, but FireRed was like, okay, let's do it. Maybe. I'm getting it wrong again. I'll have to come back and fix it next week. Lincoln wasn't super into it, but previous President James Buchanan was. An amendment to give the South slavery and say... and put it an amendment in the Constitution that says slavery is okay in the South forever until we repeal the amendment or whatever. And that was to try to keep the Union together. They thought that that would help, but the South was, I think the South was just like, well, we want slavery in the border states, or the West states too, the new states. And Lincoln and the Republicans were like, can't do that. But James Buchanan liked the Corwin Amendment, but Lincoln wasn't super into it. Lincoln said in his inaugural that he wasn't opposed since it was signed by Congress, but it was never actually ratified by the states. Lincoln in his inaugural address said something like, well, if you guys want to do it, okay, let's do it. But I don't really like it. But if you guys already signed the bill, so like if we're gonna do it, then let's do it. It's pretty interesting. Lincoln is more, like, reading this book, he's more, what's the word, like equivocal, or like he's equivocating more than I thought he would. He's kind of like sitting back a little bit. He's not being super like abolitionist or super pro-slavery. He's just being a little bit more neutral, which is interesting because in like today's mindset, that would be seen as kind of like weak, or like you're not taking a side, you're sitting on the fence. But I guess it worked. I don't know. It was just the way his personality was, where like people trusted him. Like he wasn't sitting on the fence, he was sitting on the fence, but like in a principled way, and people really trusted that he was a good guy, and like they liked him. He was very personable and self-effacing. People just really liked him, and they trusted him. And he wasn't very like combative, being like, you guys are all bad, and you gotta listen to me. He was more like trying to please everybody, but like in a good way. Lincoln's reasoning for the war. This was important because I mentioned last time I was thinking like, why was Lincoln so staunchly opposed to the Union splitting up? Because like the people in the North, they didn't want slavery. People in the South, they wanted slavery. So let them split up. Who cares? Like, we have to kill 800,000 people to keep this union together? It's like a forced union. We should just divorce, right? We hate each other so much. But here's Lincoln's reasoning, and I actually totally agree. He said this is a quote, Lincoln's reasoning for the war was not ending slavery. This is his reasoning. The central idea pervading this struggle is proving that popular government is not an absurdity. We must settle this question now, Here's the question. Whether in a free government the minority have the right to break up the government whenever they choose. If we fail, it would go far to prove the incapability of the people to govern themselves. So he's saying that in order for a democracy to work, there have to be people who don't get their way sometimes. But those people need to accept the loss. They can't just leave, otherwise we'll keep fracturing on every disagreement until we're a confederation of none. Does that make sense? I like that idea, like a confederation of none. It kind of makes sense. It does make sense to me. Americans, this is like kind of a stupid platitude, but like American strength does come from its togetherness and like its size. Like, we're not Europe where it's like, oh, it's England and France and you got these little tiny countries and this European Union, but like still France and Germany, and like that's what America would be if we just fractured every time we had a disagreement. We would be kind of like the European Union, except worse, because we would all hate each other, because we started as a combined thing and then we broke up. But that's a stupid point. It makes total sense, right? If Civil War happened and we ended up splitting up, then the next time we had a major disagreement, like a major disagreement, we would just be like, okay, well, you guys want to do this thing and we want to do this thing, so let's split up again. And it would just keep happening until we have no power together. And he's trying to preserve a real ideal of democracy, like the people governing themselves, being able to elect people and then have them do things, and if they don't like it, they elect somebody else. And not just being like, we elected this person, but we don't like this, so we're gonna leave. That's not how it... The ideal of governing ourselves, a main tenet of that means like people aren't gonna get their way sometimes, and those people have to be okay with that. It's more profound than that. I'm reducing it and I'm making it sound stupid, because a minority of opinion, it's not a minority of like people. I haven't really tried to explain this before, but it's like a really kind of weighty idea. It's America. It's democracy. It's a new system of government. It's 200 years old, kind of 300 years old, whatever. Where we get to pick who tells us what to do, to govern ourselves. And if we can't do that, if we have civil wars, if we have splitting of unions, it means we can't do it, and it means democracy doesn't work. That's what Lincoln was trying to preserve, just the idea of democracy and self-government. We don't need a king to tell us what to do. We can figure it out ourselves. Okay, we have two opinions here. South people want slavery, North people want slavery. We talk about it, majority vote, then that's the way it is. We need a solution. That's the thing. Self-government is about solutions. Coming up with solutions to problems. Saying that there's no solution and that the solution is to just leave is not a solution. That's giving up on self-government. And Lincoln didn't want to do that. And I had a quote from Washington too. And oh no, I just said Lincoln was basically thinking about Washington, and I was like, oh, Lincoln said the Union was important too, but I'm sure he just got that idea from Hamilton. Washington was like, I don't know, is it offensive to say, like, he's kind of like a Ronald Reagan type, where he didn't seem like he was the smartest guy. Ooh. And so, like, the people around him just kind of made decisions. He's like, you're smart. Okay, let's go with your idea. Because, I mean, he didn't know anything about... He was the first Democratic president. So, like, he didn't know anything about what he was doing. I catch that Pikachu. Yeah, so that was important. Everyone didn't love Lincoln, that's good. Unity isn't always a great thing. 9/11, for example. We need some people to always hate the president. I think that's true. That's kind of my philosophy. I know Fox News is bad and everything, but, like, Lincoln had his own version of Fox News. They had a press that was like a Democratic press in the North that was saying, like, oh, Lincoln, every time Lincoln did something, the lady who wrote the book would quote, like, the Democratic Times or whatever, and they'd be like, oh, Lincoln's just being so stupid, this is the stupidest thing I've ever seen. Well, I think it's a good thing. Like, I guess the problem is just, like, people... Like, yeah, I'm done for the day. People don't know how to think correctly, or they get, like, too... Well, you know what I think the problem is? Too much time. People watch too much news. Back in the old day, people would just farm all day, and they wouldn't watch the news. They would hear a news from one side, and they would hear news from the other side, and they'd be like, oh, I think this thing. And then they go back to farming. But they wouldn't just constantly be being fed with, like, president's bad, president's bad, president's bad, president's bad. Both sides, I don't think it's helpful. I think 24/7 cable news is, like, the worst thing ever. And social media is bad too. But whatever. See you tomorrow. Bye.